Welcome to Merschman Seeds Cup of Joe. On this episode, Dylan summarizes a corn disease outlook from Corteva and how a starting line seed treatment can help combat and overcome challenges in the growing season. See slides of a presentation from Shane Brockhoff of Meristem about protecting the genetic yield potential in corn and soybeans.
Hi, this is Joe Merschman. Welcome to Merschman Seeds Cup of Joe. Today we have our regulars, Ben, Dylan, and Lynn. And Dylan, I guess you're going to start today.
Yeah, so this week Corteva put out a 2025 corn disease outlook. It really kind of talked about what disease that we saw in 24, but sometimes it seems like if the disease is here, we're going to have it potentially in 25 again. Actually, in 2024, we know we had a lot of southern rust that came up. Rust was definitely a bigger player than the previous years, just because of all the southern winds that we got, along with the rain and hurricanes in the south. It was an estimated 244 million bushels of that southern rust would have taken off the top. That is a lot. But then we go right into tar spot. It was estimated at 293.3 million bushel. So that is a large amount. The next thing would be gray leaf spot, and it came in at 23.2 million. So that spread is huge.
Big. So what you're saying, Dylan, is tar spot and southern rust are big time yield robbers. So those are the ones that you really got to scout for and be prepared for, and if you don't, it's going to cost you.
Yep, and I would go a little bit farther. I think we should, at least in the local area, tar spot is what we need to really be focusing on. I know it's a big push around everywhere. We don't want to keep talking about it, but we also need to keep in mind.
Well, there's 203 million bushels at play there. Yeah. That's why it's so important.
One of the things that we can say, at least from, there's no hybrids that we know of that are resistant to tar spot, but there does seem to be differences in genetics. In other words, some varieties are really susceptible, and some take a little bit longer before they become highly infected. And the power core varieties that we represent seem to be on the top side of not necessarily, we can't use the word tolerance, but they're better genetics for fighting against tar spot. And then when you put in combination with a good fungicide program, you've got a better defense system than maybe some of the other genetics that are out there. So it's something to pay attention to, I guess.
Yep, then along with a good seed treatment too that we know that we thrive on too at Merschman's with our seed treatment on both our corn and soybeans. So that's something we have can help us with protection too. But we know tar spot, it's been around a decade that it's really kind of been in the corn belt, and it just keeps progressively getting worse, and it's starting to pop up kind of everywhere. But I think with we're having a lot less tillage, it seems like. In some areas, and so we have a lot more residue that is kind of overwintering and staying in that residue. I think that's maybe why it's really starting to spread.
Once it's in your area, you've got to watch for it every year. Just a matter if we have the right growing conditions and how bad it's going to be.
Yep. Then I would say you can look at the fungicide data, and most of the time, right now the way corn is, it seems like one pass is the only thing that's going to pay, but maybe as corn moves up, or depending on how severe your tar spot is, that's really when we need to think about maybe more than one pass.
So southern rust we don't have to worry about unless we get some hurricanes or something really forceful to push those spores up from down south, but tar spot's in the residual and going to be there this coming year, depending upon if you got the right moisture conditions.
Yep.
I know we've talked about it before too. It seems like there is a correlation that if a hybrid has good protection against tar spot, it maybe will lack a little bit on southern rust. But I think it's been probably about a month or two ago we were talking about it. From our perspective, we would rather be much stronger in that tolerance, because southern rust is not something that we feel like. I think we've had it twice in the last decade. It's a very opportunistic pest that we have to deal with versus tar spot that we have now know that we have to deal with it every year. So we want that sure thing with tar spot, and we're willing to maybe have a little bit of not quite as good against southern rust, but knowing that we can manage it with fungicide and knowing that it's not a perpetual disease that we have to go against. And to your point, yeah, Allison Robertson's research has shown that with Iowa State that the R1 application with fungicide is the most efficacious to the tar spot inoculum, leading to a higher ROI from the ROI standpoint. Yeah. There's options there. And I would be curious too, we talk about Xyway and some of those others, that when you start building a very healthy plant, there's just some kind of natural immunity that comes out of that. So when you don't have potentially a stalk rot or a root rot, also compounding with tar spot, we see some really good responses out of a single pass there that may not necessarily show up when we're looking from an ROI standpoint with tar spot. If that's our only, kind of target pest that we're targeting there.
Couldn't agree more. A lot of bushels we got to protect, right? And then one of those ways, I guess, that protecting, we can go into this this presentation that Shane Brockhoff with Meristem we had a sales meeting this week, and he did a presentation, and I pulled a handful of my favorite slides out of his presentation, and a lot of it is talking about protecting the yield potential, the genetic potential of what is out there. University of Illinois, through Dr. Sybil's work and through Fred Belo's work, talk about 25% of the yield is determined, during grain fill. So we want to really work on going to the point of the what you guys were talking about, either from a disease standpoint with a fungicide or foliar feeding and reducing stress through different products that Meristem has to offer. I kind of wanted to go through some of these different slides. So like what we were talking about, 25% of the yield potential is preserved during fill. This is a really interesting one that really doesn't have anything to do with you could look at this and not say, okay, Ben's just out here trying to sell me something. Like, this is actually really good data, and I'm not sure where they pulled this data from, but they talk about, like, when you compare the yield record setters through the National Corn Growers Association or the guys that set records on soybean side, there's a 105 bushel gap, and they talk about the different stress days that are accumulated. So when you're looking at this chart, you look at planting season at the beginning, the growing season, and then the time it takes to finish. And on average, over the past 10 years, we have 11 stress days in the first 41 days of that plant's life when the daytime highs are less than 60 degrees. So those are stress days from being cold. What are things that we can do to affect and help that plant out? We've talked about it before with products like Revline Hopper Throttle Corn with Ether. We have the ability for phosphorus, a higher amount of phosphorus uptake. We have different enzymes and stuff in that pail that help protect that plant from those stress days when we have cooler temperatures and when that corn plant's just getting off and getting started. The next step is what I would consider the vegetative stages, and from basically June 1st to July 31st, there is 61 days in that period. On the 10-year average, 20 days are stressful during that time frame that can nip yield back, and they are measuring those stress days by days that are hotter than 86 degrees. And then when you look at the finish line, which is basically fill, there's 45 days in that period, and you're looking at 10 of those can be considered stressful with days over 86 degrees. So when you look at that, there's 41 days. There's 41 days of stress, and that's 2.6 bushel or $10.40 per acre yield loss per day. And those are different ways that we can use products like some of these Meristem products to help mitigate those stresses. So when you're in the growing season and you're working on your first post pass, that Harvest Shield Complete, it's a foliar product, but it's also got products like I believe they're called phenolic acids, and those phenolic acids lower the ethylene production in the plant, which is a natural thing that happens in the plant for 60 days. Once it has a stressful period, it will release ethylene, and that's the plant's way to hurry itself along so that it can get to grain fill faster, and that's what we're trying to prevent, because you have to have ethylene for grain to ripen. So basically, when a plant is under stress, it's going to reduce the amount of days that it takes to fill, so you're trying to reduce that. So when you have a phenolic acid plus a foliar product like that Harvest Shield Complete, you are preventing the ethylene production, allowing for a longer time for that plant to fill. Same thing can be said with the NKBS and the Revline late season. Those are both ways to mitigate stress and encourage fill later on in season. So I just thought this was a really interesting chart, how they break it down by different stress days, the information that they're providing, and it's something to be thinking about. We're not quite, I mean, we're really close to the Revline Hopper Throttle corn season for the planter box treatment, but these are things to be thinking about from the Harvest Shield Complete, Revline early season, Revline late season, and KBS. Took me a long time to explain that slide, but we get the same general concept from this slide here, and we will leave this in the attachments, so if you guys wanted to look at this a little bit closer. Same thing can be said on soybeans. There's 41 different stress days at 0.9 bushel per day. It's about a $9.93 per acre per yield loss day. So there's a lot of money being left on the table, and we could do things with either the Revline Hopper Throttle soybean with ether, and I see I have the wrong logo on there, and we can also use that Harvest Shield Complete at post time frame, NKBS, Revline late season during the latter half to affect the same thing with the corn side. You know, you're reducing stress when that plant is setting nodes, you're lengthening that growing season, and then you are helping that plant fill the pods by adding extra foliars later on in the season. Did I miss anything on those two slides?
No, and I think the part to look at here too that is convenient is these passes are happening in conjunction with something else. We're not asking you to go out and make a special pass. Now, you definitely can, but for the sake of this one here, what they're basing that off of is basically hitching a ride with fungicide and hitching a ride with herbicide.
Yep, and to explain where they're getting that $407 total opportunity, again, I just wanted to make sure they're taking the average yield of that county or the state or the nation, and they're comparing it to what Alex Harrell did this past year with his, 231 bushel, something like that, 231 bushel record yield. So interesting slide there. This is another one of my favorites that I caught out of here. So in the 2024 National Corn Growers Association Yield Contest, there are people in this contest that are using Meristem products. Number 1 in 3 out of the 6 divisions used Meristem products, and 7 out of the top 18 were using Meristem products. And our rep that Shane that was giving this presentation, he actually is that 310.8 in that record there. So, and we have a couple of dealers names that are on here. So we have guys that have been using the Meristem system. It's obviously showing very, very nicely here, but I thought this was an awesome slide, giving a little bit more validation to what we just talked about the last 10 minutes. So this goes back to your point. This is an awesome slide. It comes from Crop Protection Network. I think we've showed this one before. Just goes and takes a look at any of the different diseases. It always shocks guys that corn nematodes are definitely something that is forgotten about, but shouldn't be forgotten about. We have products like Trinimco in our seed treatment to help work against that. Meristem offers different pails that they just announced over Commodity Classic that they will be offering for next year that add additional modes of defense that are similar to what we are doing in our seed treatment. So you can get a little bit of extra double up if the nematodes are something that you're worried about.
Well, I think it's a good opportunity here to, we like to be very humble, but it is also for our growers to know that there are other people now that are catching kind of the same philosophy that we have when it comes to our seed treatment. So it's kind of a proof is in the pudding. Meristem is offering it through a bucket. We have very similar technologies that we have offered through our seed treatment now to the Merschman grower for 4 or 5 years now, three on the corn. So very exciting to see that, because like I said, it's a validation that we're doing something right.
Yep. when you think about things like sudden death protection on soybeans, they've got products in there that we've looked at moving forward with, and yes, we've been paying attention to them. They're talking about chitosan, something that we talk about in soybeans. They're talking about
the product that comes from shrimp. Yeah.
Yep.
Which is on our seed right now in soybeans. So
correct. So they're talking about chitosan. They're talking about different wide spectrum nematicides. So I mean, you're right. It is validation that what we are doing is correct. Here's another slide on disease, soybean yield loss. This kind of goes back to that same thing. Soybean cyst nematode is the #1 disease identified by Crop Protection Network. So we will talk about all of the new stuff probably with Peter or somebody from Meristem on the new hopper throttle pails that are available. We'll wait till they mass launch those products to get all of our viewers a little bit more educated. But this is a product that we used and got to test out last year, was the Gardex. This is a product that if you don't necessarily want to spend the extra dollars on in-furrow insecticide or the upgrade on traits, they have more and more data and more feedback from their growers as the season has progressed, and they get images like this one where you're looking at a untreated check versus Gardex. So what you're looking at there in the picture is a VT Double Pro with a dairy in like Northeast Iowa, I believe, with heavy rootworm pressure.
Continuous corn, no doubt, right?
Yep, continuous corn. And the grower was using VT 2 Pro plus an insecticide. They turned the insecticide off on the planter, and what you're seeing there is the Gardex is holding up extremely well compared to the in-furrow insecticide. So how Gardex works, it's kind of like the Trinimco. Basically, roots put off carbon dioxide. That carbon dioxide is the signal that the rootworm larvae flow to. There is a biological product in Gardex that basically basically consumes the carbon dioxide and masks that CO2 release. So when you shut that CO2 release down, I have a cool slide here we can show you that when you shut that CO2 release down, this was done in a lab, you'll actually get basically, if you take two different containers and a pipe between them, and you put the larvae in the center of the container, and you treat Gardex on the left and standard plant without Gardex on the right, only 4% of the larvae would go towards the treated, and 70% would go towards the untreated roots, and 26 would remain in the center. So this is the science behind how it works. We got to use it on a field that had heavy corn rootworm pressure. We saw that it performed as well as the insecticide. I didn't have any wind blown over corn like the previous picture, but it's definitely something that works. Why don't you go ahead and tell us what we're looking at here with this cool slide?
Yeah, so what we're looking at here is using the excavator breakdown product. When we think about white mold in particular, it's the overwintering sclerotia that tends to cause us a lot of issues when it comes to the habitual or residual problems with white mold. So anecdotal study here that they have done, and I believe Iowa State, he said, is looking at doing some research on it. But what they have found from an anecdotal side is that they were just using excavator, I believe, to just go out and improve the product. And what they found was they had a reduced instance of white mold that led to a nearly 30 bushel yield increase. And why is that important? What they believe, there's a couple different thoughts. Iowa State tends to think that maybe that not having the residue there obviously is not providing a host. Iowa State thought potentially that maybe it's actually breaking down the sclerotia of the white mold. What they tend to think though is that we're with that residue being gone and having the healthier plants and whatnot, we're able to get that wind flow through the canopy there, and then being able to not have that basically interface for the white mold. Why is that exciting? White mold's a huge problem, and if we can take care of that without the use of a very robust fungicide treatments, when you start looking at some of the foliar applied fungicides that we've talked about before, you're in the $40 acre mark. You know, what a grower would have to do to get an excavator pass is going to save them at least 50% right off the bat. And then we're not even talking about any of the ancillary benefits when it comes to you know, the reintroduction of some of the organic forms of fertilizer that's available through a residue. So very, very exciting stuff that is still to come for more research. But right there, you know, not even intending to go after it from a white mold standpoint, they're finding anecdotal evidence of a very large increase. So the good opportunity there this spring to get that product on and take care of that residue, or even maybe if like I said, if it attacks that sclerotia to prevent that infection.
Normally excavators put on in the fall though, isn't it? Normally?
It can be both.
Either fall or spring.
Yep.
But basically all you're trying to do is break down that residue.
Yep.
And obviously it may be having some effect on the sclerotia that are left carried over, or we just don't know, but it appears that prevention is better than trying to cure it.
Correct.
And when it comes to the apothecia, the little mushrooms that pop out of the ground, they have to have a fairly humid environment. And I'm just putting a little bit finer point on what Lynn was talking about. If you change the relative humidity at that ground level by not having the foliage or extra corn residue left over from the previous season, if you change the relative humidity by not having that there, that is where one of the thought process behind it is because you've now lowered that relative humidity because there's no trash there. So what you were saying is the wind is blowing through,
Yeah,
and then
it's not like a big sponge holding the water.
Right.
It's drying out.
And I believe, correct me if I'm wrong on this though, I mean it is like 1 or 2 points is the difference between, I mean we're after a very minuscule humidity change to make sure that we're in that realm.
right.
Because and some of it too, and when we're building more robust plants, we talk about temperature as well. You know, canopy can be you know, not our friend, but also too, if we can get canopy with no residue to the humidity part, when you get that shaded canopy, actually when you get down, especially like in corn, when you get down to the bottom, there is a very big temperature gradient difference. It is cooler down on the bottom versus, you know, when you get out to the top. So definitely to your point, thanks for bringing that up, because that is a very big part of the science there, to just change that gradient by 1 or 2 degrees or 2%.
So when would you apply in the spring excavator?
You can do it when you're working on burn down. You can do it even as late as your first post pass. The earlier you get it on in the spring, the more aggressive it's going to be at reducing the level of residual material, whether trash, whatever you want to call it.
And right now is a great time because we're getting, I don't want to call it free moisture, but you know, we have some frost-esque mornings, or had until we're getting a little bit. That gives us a little bit of sunlight, gives us a little bit of moisture to get that stuff, you know, kind of up and running and sporulating, and then at that point it's just a product of math. We just want to get the colonies going and reproducing, and then we're seeing pretty good success. The one that is, for talking about the post pass, I think is very important, and for the guys that are using, that is now more of a popular planting green. This is a phenomenal thing to throw in to get that residue breakdown. If you're, it seems like soybeans now, we're getting more and more folks that are planting right into the green, rye or wheat or triticale, throw an excavator in to help get that broke down and not have that trash built up over the basically the whole summer, and be able to get that that nutrient tie up that rye or triticale or cover crop's going to do, get that flush back into the system and be able to use that hopefully June, July, when we hit peak demand in the soybean plant. I think it's going to be a really effective tool to use in that scenario.
Let's see what other stuff that we have on this slide. There's just some more yield data here if you guys wanted to look through it. There's some NKBS yield data with Revline late season applied at a fungicide time frame. They're seeing a 15 bushel yield difference there. There's some trial work on the right-hand side there that we've shared with you before. That
was interesting. I don't know if you heard Shane made the comment about what they saw with the late season and the Nick.
So when they're talking about this NKBS Revlan late season, when you have that combination of a biostimulant and a foliar, when you get that applied right prior to tasseling, which is a good time to be, right at that R1 VT stage, if you can get right prior to that, you reduce the stress level in the plant and you can actually increase your nick. And what increasing your nick means is that we had a little bit of a nick issue this year with, I don't know if it was temperature, I don't know if it was moisture derivative, but we ended up with a lot of
above, probably
a combination of both. But we had a lot of silks that popped out prior to tassel drop, and we ended up with real long silks this year, and we lost some yield due to that. And it didn't matter whether if it was a power core number or if it was something coming out of the Bayer camp, Corteva camp. Almost every field that I was in had real long silks to it. So by lessening the stress in that corn plant's life right prior to tassel and grain fill, you can actually tighten your nick up to get your pollen shed to happen right after the silks start to emerge, because when you get that with a shorter silk, you can usually get better pollination through that process. So that was some more anecdotal, nice evidence coming out of that. Another slide that we had here, this Terrasym 408 450 is part of the hopper throttle pails, and it just goes to show Bex does a phenomenal job when it comes to doing their PFR studies. One of the components of the hopper throttle pail is Terrasym, and that's 3-year average you get just in the bucket alone. But I mean, that Terrasym by itself could pay 80%, 90% of the return on the cost of the pail that you're getting right there. So that's one of the reasons that I liked the Meristem hopper throttle system so well, is because they are using excellent products that give positive return on investment. And there's multiple different ways that they are attacking getting continual positive return on investment.
Plus it contains the talc and graphite that the farmer's putting on it already, so yep. You're doing 2 things at once.
Yep, you're doing lots of things at once. There's just some more yield data from last year. It talks about win rates and average bushel per acre. Soybeans up 3.1 bushel per acre. Corn was 7.1. You can look at the 80% win rate on corn, a 75% win rate on soybeans. There's increased iron, there's increased manganese levels in both corn and soybeans. You look at different nodal root length, there's just lots and lots of positive things that are being measured, and yield is obviously the most important for our growers.
I think we were discussing a Extreme Ag podcast that was kind of related to this topic. One thing too, as guys are using these products, what we are really excited about is we're building a big factory, and if we're using these products, the 80% win rate, if you're someone that's using some foliar stuff on the backside of it, I'm really curious if we start to see those numbers go up even higher as guys get more into the program, because what they had found was they would build a really great root structure and have this great base, and then just kind of forgot to feed the plant on the backside of it. So as we get more into this and get more data, I really believe that we're going to see that number go up even higher over the next couple of years.
Right. Another PFR research multi-location from 2024 comes from the ion log zinc just by itself. So Brandt calls it ends up seed flow zinc. So when you were talking about applying your graphite and talc, one of the cool things about the pail is that it has the equivalent on the hopper throttle corn and the hopper throttle corn plus ether. It has the equivalent of a quart of 9% chelated zinc, and that zinc is basically it's a starter, and that you have to have zinc to flush phosphorus into the corn plant. So if starter is something that you either don't have on your soybean planter, or it's something that you don't have on your planter and you'd like to have something to get that corn plant off to a healthier, more robust start, this is one really great way to get a positive return on investment. They're seeing 4 bushel right there, so that's 14. So just between the Terrasym and the zinc, the pail's paid for, and there's lots more components, whether it be the ether or some of the other manganese.
We haven't even talked about phosphatase and manganese yet. So.
Right. So there's more yield data here. 13.3 bushel. Gain. There's some more data came from Iowa State last year, 10.6 bushel per acre average. that Iowa State University did some numbers on. This is their last year's data of 3.7 bushel per acre across all of the independent testing that Meristem paid for. So I'm just really excited about all of these different offerings, and I thought it'd be a pretty key time now while it was fresh in my mind after Shane gave us his presentation to share some of the slides that I felt were most compelling.
Yeah, what we've been seeing here is that many farmers will try it, and the best way to try it is if you can split your planter out and treat one side with these products at planting time. Treat your seed, either soybeans or corn, and then the other side you don't, and let your yield monitor do the talking in the fall. And the folks that have been trying it are buying more. So
yes.
It's a great product and does a lot of things. All these little things that take away the stress, which take away the yield. So. Yep.
So that's what I had for this week. I think we could probably close this one out. There's a lot of data there, and for anybody that wants to check out this data, Alex will have it in the attachments. So, Joe, you going to get us out of here with a corny joke?
Yes, I am. Now, I want to warn our listeners. This is PG-13. Okay, okay. My good friend Ray sent this to me, and Ray's always noted for having a good joke, and my friend Steve, you're going to enjoy this too. So, okay, all right, PG-13. I warned you up front. I went to church this past Sunday, and the preacher asked if anyone in the congregation had a praise report. A friend of mine's wife got up and said her husband had a crushed scrotum from a bicycle wreck this past week. You could hear several men moan in the congregation. But she said, lucky for Ralph, my husband, the doctor was actually able to wire his scrotum up. She said, me and the kids were praying as the doctor performed the delicate surgery. After that, she walked back to her seat, and the preacher asked if anyone else had something to say. A man walked to the front of the church and said, my name is Ralph, and that was a sternum, not a scrotum. Get your words right, right?
Right.
All right, hope it didn't offend anybody with that one, but it was kind of funny. But anyhow, thanks, Ray. And thank all of you for watching and listening today. We sincerely appreciate your business. We know spring's just around the corner. And don't forget, Tuesday is April Fool's Day, so don't get caught. See you next week.